This Restorative Justice Life is a production of Amplify RJ. Follow us on all social media platforms at Amplify RJ, sign up for our email list, and check out our website at amplifyrj.com to stay up to date on everything we have going on. Make sure you're subscribed to this feed on whatever platform you're listening on right now so you don't miss an episode. And finally, we'd love it if you left us a rating and review. It really helps us literally amplify this work. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to This Restorative Justice Life, the podcast that explores how the philosophy, practices, and values of restorative justice apply to our everyday lives. I'm your host, David Ryan Barcega Castro Harris, all 5 names for the ancestors, and I'm the founder of Amplify RJ. On this podcast, I talk with RJ practitioners, circle keepers, and others doing this work about how this way of being has impacted their lives. Today's guest is Reuben Roberts, born in the UK, raised in New York, now working with Restorative Justice for Oakland Youth in, Oakland. Reuben, like many of our guests, has been doing this work longer than he's known the words restorative justice. We talk about his experiences bringing a restorative perspective as an adult working with young people in group homes, schools, and more. He also runs monthly webinars for California-based restorative justice practitioners to get connected and share resources. Even if you're not in California, it's still a great way to get plugged into the work. You can find all the ways to get in touch with him in the show notes, but now it's time for you to meet the man. Here's our conversation with Reuben Roberts. Welcome, Reuben.
Hey, what's going on?
Who are you?
Who am I? My name is Reuben Roberts. I currently reside in the Bay Area. I work in Oakland. I work for Restorative Justice for Oakland Youth, RJOY, as most folks would know.
Hold on just one sec.
Yeah.
Hold on one sec. I don't think I explained it to you, so I'm going to ask you, who are you, 7 times. So don't burn them all in that first. Yeah.
Okay. So you just want a short answer for each one?
You get 7 responses, so however long you want to go.
Damn. Sheesh. Okay.
All right. So, who are you?
Who am I? A native of the UK, born in Birmingham, England, of Jamaican descent.
Who are you?
Raised in the East Coast, Jersey, New York. Exposed to a lot of crime and a lot of rough upbringing.
Who are you?
A son of an immigrant family that made a lot of sacrifices to make it in this world.
Who are you?
Someone that, does, restorative justice and doesn't see it as a job, but more so like my purpose.
Who are you?
Oh, man, someone that just loves life, and wants to create space for everyone to feel welcome, to feel appreciated, and feel supported.
And finally, who are you?
A Black man living in this society, navigating through this system of oppression and trying to redirect generational curses and build generational wealth.
Wow. We're going to touch on a lot of that, but before we do, with the fullness of this question, how are you?
How am I? I'm good, man. I'm very fortunate. This pandemic has created a lot of issues for folks in terms of employment and health and mental health and all of those things. And I think for me, I've been fortunate to be able to still be working since this whole thing hit, and actually impact lives as well. So I'm very much blessed to be where I am right now. And I know that, and I appreciate that. And I'm good. I can't complain right now. I'm good.
Yeah, I think there's always this acknowledgement of there are other people who are going through it in ways that we are not, and there's
Right.
gratitude to be had for that,
Right.
and gratitude for health and mental health to the extent that we have it, right?
Right. Right.
um, and it's still a tough time,
Mm.
especially with the identities you embody as an immigrant, as a black man, as someone who is
Yeah.
trying to do this work that so many people are seemingly against.
Mm. Man, tell me about it. Tell me about it. I'm hearing, I think the vice president said something about restorative justice and like it doesn't work and this is not the way we should be doing things. I don't know. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, or I think it was at the Republican National Convention. They were talking about
Yeah.
school shooting and how the person who had done the shooting had gone through a restorative justice process, and they said, like, you see, this doesn't work. And for me
Right.
and a couple other practitioners in the community, were just like, one, let's talk about how that school is actually doing restorative justice,
Right.
and two, like, you probably, the person who's talking probably doesn't know what
Mm.
restorative justice is. We're here, and so we normally get to this at the end, but in your
Yeah.
words, what does restorative justice mean to you?
What it means to me is, and I'm just speaking in reference to the work that I've done so far, um, is being able to create a safe space for anyone to build trust with folks, build relationships with folks, and just kind of recreate that whole concept of village and just be able to just, talk about, things that come across your mind. It could be past experiences, trauma, and I think it's vital and important for us as human beings because it's an indigenous practice and it brings back that concept of village and community where when we in civilization that's how we conducted ourselves like we came together as a community or as a village and we discussed certain issues or things that we wanted decisions we wanted to make or even conflict. That's how we resolve conflict. And it just really kind of gave us a easier way to kind of just like really work with each other. So I feel like coming back to this, back to the essence of who we are as human beings and being able to communicate in that way, I
Mm-hmm.
think is huge for us uh, to really get back to this. So that's where I'm thinking in terms
Yeah.
of restorative justice.
I don't remember who said it, and I'm gonna butcher the quote, but there's something
Hmm.
about like learning this work is rekindling a truth that we already had like deep inside of us, right?
Hmm.
To your point, people across the world have had this idea of interconnection, right? Taking care
Hmm.
of each other, seeing each other as human, and like the world has gotten a lot more complicated, and some
Right.
of those things were done intentionally to separate us from those things. But doing this work is to remember our ancestral ways of being. I'm curious
Hmm.
from your perspective. You've been doing the work longer than you knew the word restorative justice. So how did that
Right.
start for you?
Man. Oh man. I remember coming out of college because I got my degree in sociology.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing like an internship at this program called the Al Moody program. This was in New Jersey, and it was for young people that were like formerly incarcerated or on probation or going through the system. And we brought the youth up to the college, do college tours with them, talk about like what they need, inspiring them. Even some of them said like, "Man, I want to go to college now." Like, just that. It started from that aspect and then like I shifted into like group homes and juvenile
Mm-hmm.
detention centers, which is crazy, right? My first job out of college was a group home for teenage mothers. That was my first job, right? And just seeing young people from 14, 15, 16, 17 years old as mothers at that age, and we help them kind of like get jobs or like go to school and we do daycare for them or whatever. Um, I think that was like my first kind of initial like space where I had to really dive in and, give advice or even like conflict, be like a mediator in
Mm-hmm.
certain situations because the girls might get into it with each other, and just really sit down. And I didn't even know that was restorative justice, just be able to mediate situations or talk to people and try to calm them down, or try to hear from somebody else's perspective versus this person's perspective, and get them to kind of understand each other's views and resolve it in a good way. So I was doing this before I even started doing restorative justice work. You know, I worked at Children's Village, that's in Dobbs Ferry, New York, outside of Yonkers. Worked in the Abbott House, that was in the Bronx when I lived in the Bronx. Like just so many different locations and spaces where I worked, where I had to engage with young people, and it taught me early to listen, because these are young people with, like, trauma and a lot of internalized, like, issues, to where you can't just address them your old ways. Because I grew up in a Jamaican household,
Mm-hmm.
so like everything was strict, and like, you had to, kind of be respectful to whatever the parents, even if the parent was rude or wrong, you still had to respect it, right? And I tried to come with that same cultural approach to the young people of this generation, and it didn't work at all because
Mm-hmm.
they weren't listening. And I realized, like, man, I gotta really be patient. I gotta really listen. I gotta really understand what's happening with this younger generation, and how can I meet them where they're at, because they constantly have been in spaces with adults that usually alienate them, or like, quiet their voice, don't allow them to speak, don't give them a chance to kind of express themselves. And I learned that early, working with young people in the group homes and juvenile detention centers. Because I had young people, then tried to, attack me, or like, you know, make a shank out of a CD case, you know, throw my shoes in the toilet, all of these other things. And the beautiful thing out of that, even when that happened, the next day I would show them love. The very next day, I would show them love. And I remember a kid that, did that to me, like, threw my shoes in the toilet, pissed on them, did all types of crazy stuff. And the next day, I literally took him and bought him something to eat, and he was like, yo, why are you being nice to me? Like, I just did all this to you. He was like, I just want to show you something different. I don't want you to see like another adult that's just going to just write you off. Like, I know that what you're doing is not me. I'm not the cause, or not, I'm not the reason why you're acting out like this. I know it's something deeper than that, And I can't really say like how I developed that. It kind of just like inherently like came out of nowhere, where I was just like, okay, let me think and look beyond the surface of these
Well,
young people, you know?
yeah, for sure. I wanted to reflect on something you were saying about, growing up in a strict Jamaican household, right? We talk
Yeah.
about the concept of, the African village where
Hmm.
people take care of each other.
Hmm.
Everyone is your parent, right?
Hmm.
All the adults are your
Right.
parent.
Right.
And there is a sense of respect, but also because, like, people have your best interests at heart. I think when we talk about Jamaica and other places that were
Hmm.
colonized, right?
Yes.
You talked about your
Yes.
family being like one from Jamaica, which was colonized, and then your family moving into the UK.
Yeah.
Black people, oftentimes black parents are doing are parenting in a way that is preparing their children to deal with the world that
Hmm.
is just going to make these demands of them.
Right.
A white world that is just making
Yeah.
demands of, like, this is the way that it is. You have to respect it.
Absolutely.
And it's not because they don't love them, right? Like, we're going to be what could seem demanding or rude or harsh or disrespectful because
Yeah.
we want you to be prepared for what's coming in the world.
Right. Right. And that's true on one end. On another end, sometimes it is harmful.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it is abusive, and it, like, just like you said about it, like colonizing, a lot of our like ways of raising and I'm speaking for like, my elders or my ancestors, like raising children was taught to us by like slave masters,
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know, can I cuss on here?
Yeah.
Ass whoopings, you know what I'm saying, or beatings came from slavery. You know what I'm
Ass isn't
saying?
a cuss word.
I mean, I'm trying to be, I don't know if kids is watching this or whatever, but like back then, you got beat for like the smallest thing, and a lot of that derivative from slavery, taught like I gotta break you or instill fear in you in order to control you,
Mm-hmm.
versus trying to teach you or be more restorative rather than being punitive. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
and I learned that in myself because culturally that's how I was raised, and I had to change my thinking process when I was working in this field of like working with youth that have been traumatized or system engaged. I can't approach them that way because I'm gonna lose every time,
Mm-hmm.
because most of these kids that's from the generation that I was like really working with, they don't care, you know, they don't care, they're not afraid to say no to adult. They're not afraid to cuss an adult out. I mean, I don't know if you remember, because I don't know how old you are.
I'm
Um,
30.
so you pretty much in my bracket. Like we were in that time frame where you feared your parent or you feared adults for being disrespectful to
Mm-hmm.
adults. You know what I'm saying? Like you had like a certain level of respect. For this gen, it's a little bit different. For I don't know if it's a level of respect, but it's like you're not gonna just talk to me any type of way. You're not gonna yell at me. You're not gonna tell me what to do. Like these kids are so like I call them the Nat Turner generation. Like they're not
Mm-hmm.
afraid of anything. They're fearless, And I just realized like I can't approach them the old ways that my parents or my grandparents approached me. You know what I'm saying? I had to really change my thought process on that, and it actually made me more successful. And I built some very long lasting relationships with kids that I've worked with over the years because of that. And I watch, and it's crazy because I can watch. I worked at Frick Middle School in East Oakland, and I would watch how a teacher would engage a young person, and I would just like automatically know how it was gonna like the outcome was gonna be based on how the teacher or the adult approached that young person. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? If you listened, if you try to, understand the young person, or if you just try to be authoritative, like out the gate,
Mm-hmm.
and pretty much lose them from there. And ultimately the kid is the one that suffers because the person that has the power or the power dynamic, they kind of, dictate the outcome of that conversation or whatever happens with that young person.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot in there. It's not that adults don't deserve respect, and it's not that kids
Mm-hmm.
don't deserve respect. But like before we're adult, before we're teacher, before we're a student, before we're child, like we're
Mm-hmm.
human, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so like, are you acknowledging me on that level? And I think it's
Right,
on adults to model that,
right,
because kids, students are growing up
right.
in a world that often isn't teaching them that. But I also think, like, to your point about, parents, like black parents being taught how to parent by slave masters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Adults in this world have been taught to treat children in a way that's controlling, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm curious what it was for you. Maybe it was just like the experience that you had where like this isn't working, but like
Yeah,
somebody needs to like have that re-education experience or remembering that, like, humans first, respect, relationship, and
right,
then I can make a request based out of my
right,
need instead of do this
right.
because I'm the adult in the
Because I
room.
told you to.
Yeah.
Right, right. Man, I don't know. Like I really, 'cause honestly, like to be completely honest with you, like this work isn't for everybody. Uh,
say
let, let
say
me
more.
just let me just say that. Like for you to like really be in charge or like be responsible for other people's lives, like you have to really, be, understanding, be patient, um, be fair, also be firm at times, but really have like a balance. It's a skill to have that kind of balance to know how to approach every situation, especially with young people, and I see a lot of professionals and a lot of adults that like, make many bad decisions or a lot of mistakes because they might come with their own personal like agenda or their own personal views or belief system
Hmm.
that doesn't match up culturally with the folks that they're serving.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like if you come from a culture where you tell like you're supposed to look somebody in the eye
Hmm.
when I'm talking to you out of respect versus someone else or a young person that you approach and they're taught that you're not supposed to look somebody in the eye when you talk or an adult in the eye when you look to them because it's seen as disrespect. That's a culture clash.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And if you come in with that concept of your belief system of this is the way it's supposed to be and not rather like trying to understand and learn, you know what I'm saying? It creates this culture clash and it just makes it hard for everyone else. You know what I'm saying? And I think sometimes like some people just don't understand that, just really approaching this work. And that's
Yeah.
why I say it's not for everyone because you have to be a special type of individual to really do this. This is not something you could just anybody can just apply and just like, one size fits all type thing. Like it takes a special type of human being to be able to be responsible for other human beings.
Yeah, a couple questions. One, like I come from the perspective of like, restorative justice work, if we're going to
Yeah.
use that term. I think that term is reductive in some ways.
Uh-huh.
It's not fully talking about what we're talking about. But for
Uh-huh.
the purposes of this, like restorative justice work is for everyone. Because
Hmm.
we all need it. When you say this work, what do you mean by that?
I mean, as an educator,
Oh, okay.
as let's say just somebody that does youth work,
Mm-hmm.
um, restorative justice is for everybody,
Okay.
but it's not meant to be. I don't think I don't think everybody can lead it. You know what I'm saying? In a way,
Right. Okay.
because of just their cultural views or like they would have to be broken or have to be like um just like taught in another way to actually understand what the work is, you
Yeah.
know?
I think
And
one of the things that white supremacy culture teaches us is that there is like one right way of doing things, or I like to say like
right,
one white way of doing things, right? And it's not
right.
just white people who can uphold that. It is
Oh
other
yeah.
people of color who can do it.
Oh yeah.
But we have to be able to look at multiple perspectives and accept that like our what we know to be true is not capital T true.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there are like some truths about living on earth, like if I drop an apple it will fall at
Mm.
9.8 meters per second, right?
Mhm.
Squared. I
Mhm.
Physics was a long time ago, but
Right.
to your point about like eye contact and like what does respect mean, different people have different versions of what that means.
Right.
What does it look like to give and receive respect?
Right.
In things as simple as eye contact, it could even be like as simple as like, hey, come into the classroom quietly, right? For
Yeah.
you as a teacher, that might mean like everybody be silent. For me as a student, that might be like, oh, I'm just gonna whisper to my friend, and like
Right.
I'm following your rules, right? And so
Right.
like doing this work allows us to have that conversation about our different
Mhm.
perspectives, see, and
Mhm.
like to your point about what you were talking about in the group home, like get the other person's story and see how we can
Yeah.
move forward together in a good way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, man. I totally agree with that. I forgot my train of thought. I was just about to say something and I completely forgot my train of thought. But yeah, just really to understand and to be patient and to approach this work, as a practitioner or as an educator or as an administrator or even as like a policy or district person, that make these big decisions. to understand like the importance of listening, you know,
Mm.
and not coming in with your own agenda and trying to force, you know, your own belief systems onto folks, you know. And even with me, I'm not perfect, you know, and at the same time, there's definitely times where, you know, a young person will actually call me out or check me, you know, and I'm just
Mhm.
like, you know what, you're absolutely right, man, my fault, you know, my bad, you know, and I really love that, you know, I love when young people advocate for themselves, and I try to encourage young people to advocate for themselves all the time, you know, and I think that's huge for everyone to have a voice. That's so important to me. That's like a high priority for me. Everybody should have their own voice, for sure.
Absolutely. We talked about how you were doing uh, work that was related to this in group homes and in foster care and
Yeah,
with youth who had been involved in the criminal legal system in New York.
yeah,
That's not
yeah,
where you are, even though you're rocking a Yankees hat right now.
yeah,
You're in Oakland.
yeah.
How did you make that transition?
So like I said, with the group homes and the juvenile detention centers, it was kind of like a glass ceiling. You know, there was no room for like, you know, for me to move up because the people that was in these positions of like directors or supervisors been there for like 30 years. They
Hmm.
weren't going nowhere, you know. And it was crazy. It was a Jamaican brother that said to me, like, don't, you know, stay here. You know, you're gonna put your head down, and then 10 years later, you're gonna look up, and you're gonna be stuck in the same position. You know, and that really
Hmm.
struck me. And that's when I decided, yeah, I need something else. I need something different. You know, and it was fortunate that I had a friend that I met that was from California in New York, and they encouraged me to come check it out. You know, and I came out here. I came out here twice. So I came out here in 2009, in December of 2009, and I stayed here for about a year and a half. And I was working at another middle school, and I was teaching well, actually, I was doing this rites to passage, kind of like young men's group,
Hmm.
and just working with young black and brown boys, and you know, just really just being kind of just using my experience and my expertise in working with young men to engage with them and encourage them and you know help them with their schoolwork and just make good decisions for themselves. So that lasted for about a year and a half. I left and went back to New York for about a year, some change, and then I came back in 2012, right? And that was my first initial like interaction with restore. I didn't know what restorative justice was. I did
Hmm.
not know. I just knew there was a term, and you know, and they hired me because the dude that interviewed, his name was David Newsom. Um, he interviewed me. You know, he asked me a ton of questions, and he just loved, you know, what I represented. You know, even though he knew I didn't like know anything about restorative justice, he just felt like, yeah, you the type of person I want. You
Hmm.
know, and we got trained over the summer, and then we pretty
Who were
much
your
just
teachers?
him uh I'm gonna say um who else who else was on that team? Kamoya Johnson, uh Yari's, I can't remember Yari's last name. Um there's maybe three or four folks that were in OUS, Oakland Unified School District, that
Hmm.
trained me on top of like going to different like trainings with like Fanya Davis and you know all these other folks from RJOY. Like I knew all of those folks, right? And my first year doing it, I was split between two schools. I was the restorative justice coordinator for two schools at one time.
Hmm.
And I was like 16 hours here, 12 hours here. Like it was crazy, right? And one of the schools was like in a privileged area, but it was a bad school. It was terrible because the year before they had five principals in one year.
Oh, wow.
It was like, you ever seen Lean on Me? Like that type of, you know, this craziness, right? And then the other school wasn't so privileged, which was Frick Middle School in East Oakland. And they didn't have as many resources as the other school, but I just loved the environment because it was very family oriented. It was like one of the blackest schools in Oakland,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very family oriented, and I loved the environment there. And even though I did love the folk, because I worked with the twin. I don't know if you ever heard of these twin principals, the Richardson brothers
Mm-mm.
that started in Oakland, and they just pretty much turned the whole school around, in 1 year. And I was on the team with them, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful to see. And ultimately, I had to make a decision between the school that was privileged and a school that wasn't so privileged.
Right.
And I decided to go to the school that wasn't so privileged because the twins were at the privileged school, and I knew they was going to take good care of it, right? And I went to Frick Middle School, and I was there for about 6, 7 years, you know, being the restorative justice coordinator there.
What
And
did that involve?
I would do a lot of community building circles, going into the classrooms, building relationships with the teachers and with the staff and the admin that was there at the time, and also to resolve conflicts, right? So OUSD actually had a lawsuit, right? And there was a lawsuit put against them by the NAACP for the school to prison pipeline because there was too many black boys being expelled and suspended and ending up in juvenile hall in Oakland,
Mm-hmm.
like too many. So restorative justice was one of those things that was implemented to stop that school to prison pipeline, right? So when I got to the school, I was placed there to bring down the suspensions and the expulsions, right? And the principal really loved me because if there was a fight, or if there was an argument or an issue, or somebody was being bullied, he would call on me to resolve the conflict. Rather than suspending the kid or just sending the kid home, he would send them to me, right?
Right.
And it kind of built a culture where kids would actually know, like, if I'm about to fight somebody or if I'm about to get into it with somebody, I'm gonna just hit I'm gonna come to Mr. Roberts. They're gonna come to me,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just gonna say, "Yo, like, I'm having issues with this young person or this kid. Like, I'm about to fight this kid, Mr. Roberts. You better get him." And and it turned into like me being the go-to person for any situation or any conflict on campus. And I had a real great relationship with all the kids there, and pretty much majority of the staff and the teachers there, and it was a dope experience. It was a dope experience.
Yeah.
Sure.
I know anyone who has listened to this podcast will know, will probably know what I'm about to say is like, a lot of the times restorative justice is just painted as this thing that we do after harm has happened to resolve it. But what you talked about was so much about building those relationships proactively, right? Being in the classrooms with the teachers and the students. So, teachers were going to have a easier time navigating the relationships with their students. Even the relationships that you're building with the students, they know to come to you for support, right? Restorative justice isn't just about like repairing the harm. It's about like proactively meeting people's needs. And I mean, I'm going to say that over and over and over and over because people need to hear it.
Yeah, and I was fortunate because I played basketball, so I was playing with the kids on the playground, and playing. We'll have like the staff versus students games, and I just really built like a reputation, because not just because of my basketball skills, but just like just having that kind of connection to the young people, like, oh, Mr. Roberts, he's nice in ball, but at the same time, like, it was just, a beautiful transition because the youth would always, and on top of that, I coached basketball there. And that was like a great way for me to engage with young people outside of the classroom,
Right.
So it helped a lot. It definitely helped a lot.
And it's not just like, I think some people might listen to this and be like, oh, but I don't coach basketball. I can't connect with them in that way. Like, it's not about, of course, you're not going to connect with them the way that Reuben connects with them. You're not
Right.
Reuben, but what is the
Right.
way that you can uniquely connect? And sometimes it's going to
Yeah.
take a little bit of like listening and
Yeah.
learning, especially if you don't come from the
Yeah.
same culture or background.
And it's crazy. It's crazy that you say that, right? Because I built that rapport with the boys, like had, really strong relationships with them. But also, like, I had strong relationships with the girls, and they pretty much came to me and said, you do everything for the boys. You have they have all these resources, but we don't have any. Like, it was true though. None of the girls didn't have no programs. There was no like, sisterhood thing, none of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, damn, like, I feel like this is falling on my hands. Like, what am I going to do about this, right? So for 5 years straight, I would hold this young women's empowerment conference. As a man, like, it's crazy, right? For me to be like holding this. And it was dope because I had a group, because actually I had, each year I would have a group of youth that I trained to do restorative justice.
Mm-hmm.
So they would actually help me resolve conflicts and hold space.
Right.
And I also would use them to host events or whatnot. So we did a women's empowerment conference. And the first one, or all of them pretty much, like, we would do workshops, right? So like it would last maybe 4 or 5 hours throughout the day, but every hour you would switch to a different workshop, right?
Right.
And it would be like self-love, self-worth, just about like your image as a young woman, cleansing yourself and hygiene and, all of those things, like all of these different, but I would like people, and then based on the work that I did, like, I knew a lot of people in the community, so I would call on, like, this sister knows how to do this, so I would have her host a workshop for that. This sister knows how to do that. So I would have like different women that would host these different workshops,
right?
Just like encourage and be, and some of them were beautiful, so they were like hella just easy to just like connect with the young people, and ultimately, like, it just kept going on. And it was funny because when I was in New York, I ran into this sister that was an actress, right? She did some movie with Monique called Fat Girls, and she was on Love Thy Neighbor, this other Tyler Perry TV show. And I asked her, I said, yo, like, I'm moving to Cali, so like when I go out there, like, I'm gonna need you to come through and talk to the kids. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And how some people hit you with the Hollywood, like, yeah, I got you, and you never see them again.
Uh-huh.
But she actually came through. Like, she really came through, man. And she did it for like 4 or 5 years straight when she came in. And the kids were just so blown away. They're like, wow, like, this is like somebody that's on TV, that's like in Oakland, talking to young girls. And I had other folks too, Fanya, Jennifer Madden, she was a judge in Oakland, sisters that were like in law enforcement, that's done work in the community and nonprofit organization, like, just really great women that I could call on to kind of just lead it. But like, just like you said about like me playing basketball and that being my way to kind of connect with the boys, like, my relationship with the girls was really just us like meeting just personality wise, you know what I'm saying? It had nothing to do with sports or anything, but just personality wise. And then using that to kind of find things that they were interested in. Like, they wanted to do fashion design or like, I created like that event, like we did a fashion show in that event too, right? Because one of the workshops was like, you had to make we did a trash bag fashion show. So you had to design a dress out of a trash bag. It was crazy. It was crazy, but it was fire. Like, they were so like creative. Like, one girl, she blew air into 2 garbage bags and turned them into wings and put them on the back. Like, yo, like it was just like really, really fun and just like, engaging to see young people and young girls just use their ingenuity, to create their own happiness or whatnot. But I was just happy to just create that space for them and kind of just stand back and be the behind the scenes person, just like, throwing it all together. So.
Right. So it's not like it's not that it's like all centered around you, because you can never be everything to everybody,
No,
right? But like,
hell
how
no.
can the community um, support, right? How can you bring in people who can do that work? Because, like,
Right.
you're you're probably not the best person to like run
No.
any of those workshops, right? But you have all
No.
these amazing women and other people in the community who
Man,
can help meet that need.
really. We would buy like gift bags for the girls or whatnot. I don't know about makeup and all that stuff. So I would like call my coworker, I'm like, yo, like, what should we get? Could you help me or could you buy this? Like, I'll give you the money. Just go ahead and go get it, because I don't know like what girls need or what they want. But at the same time, I just want to be supported, I just want to be there to help them out. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
In that time, you said you were doing that for like 7 years.
I worked in OUSD for about 6, 7 years. And I was doing that the Young Women's Empower conference for about 5 years in a row, or 4 or 5 years in a row. Yeah.
Yeah. What were some of the challenges that you faced during all that time?
During all that time, um, I think adults more than anything. Um, Folks that felt that I was too easy on the kids. I should be more harsh. I should be more punitive. And this is coming from, like educators that know that I'm the restorative justice person, you know. Um, Switching like administration because we switched to like new principles and just the way they engaged the young people I didn't agree with. So we would always bump heads on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was always a challenge for me. It would never would be the fun part is always the kids, the thing that I look forward to. And even, when kids would give you a hard time, like it never really pulled me out of character or made me feel like, man, I can't do this shit. Like this is just too much for me. But it just always would be adults that would kind of make it difficult or create, you know, some challenges or whatnot.
Yeah, a big part of that, a big part of doing this work is helping adults remember this way of being. What are some of the ways
Mm.
you did that?
Um, I would love when like, let's say I did a community building circle. I
Hmm.
always made sure like the teacher would have to participate, right? And would have to, engage in like, being vulnerable or talking about their because I would want the young people to see their teacher as a human being and not just this authority figure. Like
Right.
this person was once a kid before, you know what I'm saying? Let them share, some of their experiences and realizing like, wow, like, I mean, I'm just like you know what I'm saying? And on top of that, having games, creating events where teachers would participate if it was like a dance contest or a talent show, and just really kind of break down those barriers of that hierarchy or like that level of this is the person on top or whatever. Like I always would try to break that barrier, just for folks to see like the humanity, and for young people too, because sometimes they look at adults and they like look at us as robots,
Hmm.
and with no feelings or no emotions. And just to really get young people to see like, this teacher isn't such a bad person. They might have, these strong, authoritative ways of thinking or whatever, because they want what's best for you and they think that this is what's best for you. But at the same time, just understanding who they are as human beings and trying to
Y-
be patient with them.
Yeah. Can you think about a specific time where that like was really successful with an adult?
Um, I remember this one teacher, I'm not going to say his name,
Sure, sure.
but one teacher was so controlling. Like he had to be in control of his classroom. He had to, the wherever you sat, like there was a seating chart, um, the grades, like everything was just so like, confined,
Hmm.
right? And I had to really get him to see how harmful it was for him to even, you know, be so like aggressive at times or be yelling or, talk down or belittling young people in front of their peers. And I can remember doing a harm circle with him and three other young African American boys, and he's a white male. And for him to just listen to, because I really wanted him to listen and
Yeah.
understand like where they were coming from or what their perspective was, and understanding like the impact that's going to have on you, if you, try to approach this a little bit differently, you know, and just to empathize with a young person. Let's say a young person that's coming from a broken home that, has been traumatized, that has been abused, that's been, exploited in many ways, and you as an adult coming in and you remind them of a parent or an adult figure that abused them in that way. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm saying? And then for him to have that aha moment, like, oh wow, like wow, I just realized I'm doing this because that's how I was raised. And he actually like, kind of opened up too and kind of said like my father was like this and like, I had to, be raised this way. So it kind of broke down those barriers, you know what I'm saying? Of just like understanding, we can actually come to a compromise. We can come to an agreement of how we want to conduct ourselves in a classroom, versus me just being an authoritarian and saying, this is how it's going to go. I don't care what you think. I don't care how you feel. You can't go to the bathroom. None of that. Like, just real, just strict. And that would cause, young people to, either cuss him out or want to fight him or, want to do evil things to him, and I'm telling them, because you're not from Oakland, you weren't raised in this environment or in this culture, you're going to rub people the wrong way, and especially young Black kids from Oakland, they just don't take no mess. So you gotta understand, how this can be impactful. So yeah, that's just an example, a small example of a time when I really had to kind of like drive that message home to the adult to understand, because I definitely spoke to the young people about it and they're just like, man, he just don't get it. He don't listen. He ain't gonna listen to us, and I had to really kind of encourage them to like give him a chance, to let me talk to him, let me get him in the space. Let's try to see if he'll listen. Initially the first thing he did was like, you, like right from the door, from in the beginning of the circle,
Oh, even in the circle.
in the circle, like you, like pointing the finger. And I had to hit him. I had to break him down. I said, hold on. I said, you got to really start looking at yourself, and I really got at him kind of, I ain't gonna lie, I got at him, got at him kind of foul. But at the same time, it was just really just for him to understand, you know, um, you got to really be mindful of how you approach young people, especially when you're working with young Black and brown children that come from traumatized areas, especially when you come from privilege.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And if you're going to be a teacher, you can't teach these kids the same way you think you could teach all the other kids that's privileged to come from whatever. You know what I'm saying? And even them, you can't teach none of these kids the same way. So just like getting him to understand that and see from that perspective, I think it made him a better teacher.
For sure. I think there's a lot that to take out of that beyond just, teachers from different cultures with students, right? I think it's when you are coming into a place where you have power and privilege and you're trying to work with a group that does not experience the same intersection of their identity as you, and you're trying to do things
Right.
one particular way. Um,
Right.
that's not it. I'm really
Right.
curious about what you said to him in order to even get him to come to the circle.
Oh man. Um, I don't know, because it felt like he really for some reason he really trusted me, and he
Mm-hmm.
really um appreciated my honesty, and honestly, I would encourage him too. Like I would be like, man, you're a dope teacher. You know, you care about these kids. Like you really want to see them do great. You know, but I think there's definitely some room for some improvement. So I would really like encourage him, and also be supportive. You know, sometimes I will have to come in the classroom, and I know kids are acting up or just wanting to be, they just want to be assholes to him, and I'm just like, yo, come on, bro, like, oh, you just doing this because he white. You know, you just trying to be, you know, like I would definitely like try to defend him and be supportive, but on the same end, hold him accountable too. You know, so it's not just like a one-sided thing. So yeah, I think that's what kind of brought him to the space, just knowing that like he had someone that was gonna be supportive but hold him accountable as well, and not be, you know, like one-sided, like F you, like you're terrible, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? But actually, and people know that about me. They know I'm not like a bias, you know, and I can't be, you know, especially as an RJ facilitator. Like, there's no way I'm gonna be biased or take one person's side. Like, I'm gonna really try to understand it and try to get other people to see other people's perspective. You
Well, I
know.
mean, I think like you were biased towards the children, right? I mean, like you did your best to like help people see both sides, but like
Yeah.
yeah, like you were biased towards the
I
students and that.
mean, I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, when it all comes down to it, yes. You know what I'm saying? Like I want them to be respected. I want them to be loved. I wanted them, that's my priority. They are my highest priority. But at the same time, a part of that is them to teach them to be better human beings.
Right.
Right?
It
At
doesn't
the
mean
end of the
like
day.
they're not causing harm as well, right?
Oh man.
But
Oh
this
man.
idea of like neutral, unbiased objectivity, like that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You're the you embody all the identities that you embody, and so that's gonna
Yeah.
like make you want to fight for the rights and
Yeah.
respect for
Yeah.
these kids.
Yeah, and one thing I would always say to young people, like, I'll go to bat for you if something isn't right, if I see something where you're really like being, you know, abused or like treated unfairly, I'm gonna go to bat for you.
Hmm.
But also understand, when you do wrong, I'm gonna hold you accountable too. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So understand that. Like, don't think you're just gonna go in this and I'm gonna just be like, oh, you shouldn't have did this and did that. I'm gonna turn it around and be like, hold up, what did you do wrong?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, this idea of restorative justice being like super permissive, that's not what this is. And when you're
Right,
sharing that, what does that process look like of
right.
really holding someone accountable?
Yeah, yeah. And I just want to teach that to young people, you know? Like, obviously I want you to have a voice, and I want you to be able to speak your truth and be safe in these environments and in these spaces. But I also want you to learn, you know, responsibility, accountability, you know, and also understand, like, a part of your growth and a part of your experience is making mistakes. It's okay if you mess up. It's okay if you do something wrong. The next step is, what do you do to fix that? You know, or
Hmm.
what do you learn from that? You know what I'm saying? Like, you're gonna keep making the same mistake, or are you gonna learn from that process? And that's the teaching moment in itself. Like, don't feel bad that you messed up. Okay, it's not the end of the world. It's not. You know, let's figure this out, and you know, let's work through this process together. You know, and don't, because I think for a lot of young people, the fear of being in trouble or the fear of the consequences because they made a mistake or because they did something wrong
Hmm.
makes them do things even worse. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? Because they're worried about the reaction. You know what I'm saying? So if I do something wrong, I'm gonna lie because I don't want to get caught, or I don't want to get even more. So I'm gonna lie my behind off. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? Versus, like, if a young person can come to me and say, "Man, yo, I did this, yo, or I messed up and I did that," and I'm like, "Man, I'm gonna hold you accountable on that. It's all good. Like, I, you know, like, I definitely am gonna hold you accountable on this, but I want you to understand, like, you can always come to me. I don't want you to feel afraid to like come to me and tell me something. It's just like being a parent. Like
I was
you don't
about
want to
to say
become
that.
that, yeah, be that
Bring it
parent
back to
that's
like
just,
the idea of the village. The adults are your
yeah,
parents. Like we're here to take care of you. Please trust us. But like they
right.
are given so many reasons not to trust adults.
Right, man. And that's the hardest thing is if a kid can't come to you with like, something like a deep, like, who's, let's say for instance, like a kid, has sex for the first time, or experienced doing drugs or drinking or whatever,
Hmm.
and they can't talk to you about it, because they're afraid of how you're going to react or respond to them. You know what I'm saying? And now they go in, with their own thought process, and they continue to make the same mistakes. You know what I'm saying? Or bad decisions, because they don't have nobody to kind of counsel them or kind of, give them a different perspective from experience. You know what I'm saying? Like it's super important for us to just be there and be supportive, and for young people to feel like I can trust this adult, that they're gonna, they're gonna keep me safe. They're gonna, still be respectful to me. They're gonna, make me feel not like judged or like, looked down upon, or like try to tear me into pieces, but kind of understand where I'm coming from, you
Right.
know?
Definitely.
So,
I'm I didn't think we were going to go here, but what does that mean for, today is November 5. We still don't know the results of the election, but it's pretty clear that about half of the people who voted in the United States don't agree. Well, I'll just say don't agree with each other on some very basic things. Um, how does restorative justice impact the way that we move forward with the world the way that it is?
well, that the way that it is, man, I think you said it earlier, what you do before you even have the circle, is to really try to understand, you know, and and try to get people to see like the humanic side of like this harm or this pain of oppression that's been perpetuated for centuries, and some people have been able to come to the light. I've seen that, some I see more folks kind of like, being aware of what's going on in this country. But as far as restorative justice is concerned, it's just one at a time, one mind, one soul, one body at a time. And it's an uphill battle, because we've been doing this for a good amount of time now, and it's never going to, restorative justice isn't like an easy thing. You can't just throw it in there and say, okay, we're good now. Like it's going to take some time and a lot of effort, you know, and a lot of willingness to want to participate.
Right. I was going to say inherent to the restorative justice process is like an acknowledgement of harm, right?
Yeah.
And right willingness to participate. And
Hmm.
I think we're farther away from that with some folks than others.
Yeah.
But
Because
it's about building relationships to the extent that we can. Because like I also don't want to be the person who says to those students, continue to give this teacher a chance when they constantly show you differently, right?
mm, right, that's true. I like what you said with like the acknowledgement of harm. Um, and I think that's hard, and I'm just speaking in reference to like white folks, in terms of racism in this country, and being viewed as the beneficiaries of racism, and feeling like that wasn't me. I wasn't a part of that, or I didn't put you into slavery, but you benefited from it, You know what I'm saying? And you
You
still
still
do to
do.
this
Yeah.
day, and this system continues to perpetuate that harm just based on what we see with, George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all these other folks, like just understanding. All we just want you to do is to understand and see, you know what I'm saying? And I think it's too hard to look in the mirror, for some people, or it's too hard for them to actually just like look and see like, damn, like this is what we are, or this is what we've become, or this is what's been happening for so long. And for some people, like been clueless, or living in a bubble, or even having like a completely different perception or view on police, on the government, on America, where they think this is the land of the free and everybody has equal opportunity and you should be able to just like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but what Martin Luther King said, like some of us ain't got no boots to pull, you know what I'm saying? And you got to understand that that's the way this system works. It's not for everybody. It's not equally for every man and woman. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Or other, yeah, definitely.
everybody. Yeah.
So you're not in Oakland USD anymore.
No.
Tell me what you're doing now.
So I work for RJOY, doing nonprofit work with them. I do support schools. I do support Oakland Tech High School. Doing some work over there with the folks over there. But majority of my time is spent hosting healing circles in the community. And I also host trainings and webinars on a monthly basis. So I think that's how I met you. Holding one of my monthly webinars where I have like RJ practitioners, educators, administrators, and just all different types of folks that come to my webinar from all across the state of California or whatnot. I'm not really sure how you ended up there because I know
Uh,
you're not.
no, I'm in California. I'm
You're
in.
in California.
No, I'm in. I'm outside of Los Angeles, so I was just put on an email list that was like, "Hey, come to this thing." I was
Yeah.
like, "All right, I'm
Why did
gonna
I
come to
think you
this
was in
thing."
Chicago?
I'm from. I spent the last 5 years in Chicago, or
Right.
2015 to 2019. I was in
Okay.
Chicago, but yeah,
Okay.
been back here in Southern California for a minute now. How did you
Yeah.
get involved with? Well, can you tell us a little bit more about RJOY and how you got involved?
So I previously was at another nonprofit before RJOY, and you know how city funds work and budgets work. A budget got cut for my program, and I ended up leaving that organization. And some of the youth that I work with, they knew that I was leaving, and they was hurt by it because it was a very rough transition too. And they were actually a part of RJOY, and they said, "Yo, like we need to hire Reuben. Reuben needs to be with us." And they knew of me because Oakland is very small in terms of the restorative justice community. Everybody knows each other. And they knew who I was, and they was like, okay, let's talk to him. And they interviewed me on the spot, and it was like, yo, you good, you coming with us. So they pulled me in, and yeah, it was just dope just to come in and like immediately like be, running circles in the community, hosting circles in like public libraries and in schools, and then just doing my work, focusing on, educators because I was pretty much like the lead for like the restorative justice in schools or whatnot. And it just kind of just grew from there or whatnot.
Yeah,
Hmm.
de- definitely. How can people support you and the work that's going on right there?
They can, I mean, if they would like to just like be a part of the webinars and just, kind of connect with the community, because I've pretty much built like a forum of RJ practitioners across the whole state of California.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of use that space to kind of just like stay in contact with each other, network with each other, and support each other, because it's different in different parts of California. Like I have folks in Coachella that don't have the same resources as folks in LA or Oakland or the Bay Area, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, holding space for them, and they can reach out to, other RJ practitioners for resources, because we all have like different ideas and like different approaches to the work. So we all kind of just like we share our resources, right? Like, oh, this person does this for their circle, or this person has this type of platform, or has this type of new way of like applying to restorative justice, and it's dope. It's dope because you're constantly learning from each other. It's just like a learning community. So that's the way folks can definitely benefit from being in space, with me and with the folks that I'm working with now. So yeah, most definitely.
How do folks get plugged in? Is it just email you, or is
Yeah,
there
they
a
could just
website?
email me. They can email me.
And
It's
I'll drop that in the show notes for the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. Reuben at RJOY.org, RJOYOakland.org. And yeah, that's the best way to find me. I am on all social media platforms too. I have my own like personal get up. It's the underscore RJ Circle. It's called the RJ Circle.
Gotcha. I
My
think that's the email
nickname,
you're using right here.
yeah, my
Okay.
nickname is RJ, which is funny, right?
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so it just made sense. And I was just like, damn, like this really is for me. you know, because yeah, most people
Is
know me as RJ.
For sure. Is there a moment in your life where it really came through for you, like, oh no, this work really is what I'm supposed to be about?
Um, I think recently, right? I mean, I've been doing it for since 2012 now, so about
Mm-hmm.
8 years. So I think when I transitioned from OUSD and then I went to youth radio, uh, and I was the restorative justice program director there. They never had restorative justice before. And I
Mm-hmm.
created the program to where we served youth that were system engaged in a foster care system, juvenile. They were, in juvenile hall or exposed to gang violence, sexual exploitation, all of these different things, substance abuse, and I think that really kind of woke my game up, because I just like, wow, like I'm really here for this. I'm really doing this work because I like one group in particular that I had when I was at youth radio. Um, None of them knew each other. They're all from all different types of schools from all across the city, and because it's in downtown Oakland, so they all came to this space after school. It was like a after school program on steroids. To be honest with
Mm.
you, it was ridiculous. It was a beautiful place with just like it was you learn how to do music production, graphic design, photography, videography, um, learn how to build apps. It was a crazy place. It was so profound. But
Mm-hmm.
just having that space and being able to bring young people together and for them to be able to build relationships with each other was just a beautiful thing to witness, right?
Mm.
Because like some of them were very timid or shy, self-conscious, and like I give like because I never take credit for this. Like young people just like have like that beautiful energy in them. Like I'm gonna say one person in particular. Um, she she is just like the type of individual where she wants to hang out with everybody, right? She doesn't care if you're like the weird kid that's quiet that sits in the corner by themselves, or the most popular, loudest kid that everybody is cool with. She's hanging out with everybody, and you see her hang out with everybody, and she makes everybody feel included. And just her presence, you know, as a young person, to like go out of her way and like purposely encourage other people to talk with others, like within the circle, like it built a trust and it gave everybody permission to be vulnerable in a space, to be, loving and caring for one another, to show up for each other, to laugh, to joke. It was just a beautiful thing to witness, right? And just for me to just sit back, like I orchestrated it, but they made it happen. And it just like really gave me like so much love and compassion for the work to know like, man, I'm just so happy to be a part of this, to be blessed to be in this position to give young people a space where they can build relationships with strangers, and now like most of them are hella cool with each other now, like friends, and they all go to different schools, and they probably would have never met each other if it wasn't for this program. But like, man, and to even as a young person to just be vulnerable, to be, you know, to feel safe to be themselves, because it's a lot of pressure, and like self-esteem and confidence and all of these things is happening as a teenager, going through puberty, like all of these different things are happening to you as a young person. I can remember as myself, because I was a very shy person at that age, and for them to just like kind of come out of that cocoon or come out of their comfort zone and just like flourish. And now they're like outgoing and outspoken. And they like, I had kids that was like so quiet that you thought they was mute. And then by the end of the program, they're doing spoken word poetry on a stage in front of hella people. You know what I'm saying? Like that type of magic took place. Like just the impact of a restorative justice circle broke a kid out of their comfort zone and actually gave them like self-confidence and self-esteem to be who they truly are, to show their identity, to not be afraid to be themselves because everybody else in that space gave them permission to be themselves. You know what I'm saying? That was so beautiful for me to witness that and to experience that and still be like in like strong relationships with those kids to this day.
Yeah. Well, that really reminds me of, and somebody brought this up to me yesterday, the term sabwana, right? We see you, like you are seen. That's what this process allows us to do. With that being said, I know you do this work with young people in schools and the community. What is one place or situation where you wish people really knew this work?
In the justice system, in the community, and just engagement with like law enforcement. And when I say like when I say though all those three things, because I think it's intertwined, I'm thinking about a young person that I knew that I worked with at one of the middle schools, right? And I came across this post on Facebook where this elderly Asian lady got robbed in Chinatown by a group of girls, and one of the girls was one of the girls that I work with. And I'm looking at the comments, and people are just like, "Oh, these vile creatures! They need to be locked up. They need to go to prison. They're so foul. Like these are disgusting human beings, right?" And I'm just like, wow, like I know this girl. You know what I'm saying? And for me, I know she's not that. But I also know her trauma. I know the environment that she's growing up in. I know the type of family that she's being raised by, what she's exposed to. And I also can tell what led her ultimately to make that decision. You know what I'm saying? You come from poverty, you come from struggle. You're going to do some things, because you might be desperate. You might need money. You know what I'm saying? And if it means you got to rob an old lady just so you could eat, that's what some young people might do, you know? And I'm looking at that situation and I'm like, man, what would it be if I could have a restorative justice circle with this young person or these young people and that Asian lady and whoever else that's a part of that community to really resolve this issue, you know, or repair the harm that was done. Because if you really think about it, let's say they do find this girl, they arrest her, she gets locked up, she gets put in juvenile hall. Supposedly that's better for society, right? That just helped. We got another person off the streets. We just cleaned up the streets or whatever, right? But if you really think about it, how does that help that young person, number one, right? Does that traumatize them or make them worse? You know, do they get, like, in most cases in that scenario, like, is that environment going to be good for that young person's rehabilitation, right? Or is it going to change their circumstances when they come out? You know what I'm saying? On top of that, the person that was victimized, right? What does that do for them? Right? Because at the end of the day, now that you've been robbed or you've been beaten or whatever the case may be by a young African-American girl, every time you see another young African-American girl coming towards you, you're going to think the same thing, right? She's going to do something to me. She's going to harm me. You know what I'm saying? And you're just going to put people, and people do this a lot. They put a whole group in a box. You know what I'm saying? And that is because you're traumatized or you have a level of PTSD because nobody addressed the harm that happened to you, right? But if we had a restorative justice circle with you and those young people, and I really got you to see who this young person really is as a human being and why they chose to make these bad decisions, maybe you would think a little bit differently about them. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you won't forgive them. Maybe you will. Who knows? But at the same time, you will get an understanding or a view of not seeing them just as this vile creature, but actually a human being that might be struggling, that might be suffering, you know, and might have just made a bad decision because of the circumstance, you know, and you was a victim of that,
right?
You know, and maybe you can find some empathy in you, but at the same time heal. You know, because that person can take some accountability for their actions and see the harm that they caused you. But also you can look at them and say, wow, I see why you did that. You know, and you just gave that person. And if you did something like that, you actually gives that person permission to forgive themselves. Like, damn, maybe now the community doesn't throw me away or alienate me or feel like I shouldn't be here. Because if you don't care about me or my parents don't care about me, why should I give a fuck about you?
Right.
You know? So just having that, you know what I'm saying? Like,
definitely. And so you started this by saying, like, the criminal legal system, police, and then community. This sounds like just about community to me. I'm curious where you think, like, the application to...
Because I think, like, the legal system, like, you arrest somebody, you put them into the system, it doesn't rehabilitate them. It just kind of you bring them around an environment that makes them worse. You know what I'm saying? And then you just send them back out on the streets and they reoffend, and it just keeps happening. It just keeps recycling.
Right.
So, like, and there's no, like, form of support. You know what I'm saying? And eventually, for most young, you know, Black and brown men or young women, they end up becoming like a reoffender, and damn near into their adulthood, they're in prison.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And that's why I said, like, you know, prison, law enforcement, all of those things alongside the community, because we are responsible. You know, like that quote says, like, a child that's neglected will burn down a village to feel its warmth. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you know?
Does that mean that we're doing restorative justice training with police officers?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I know police officers that worked in Oakland that do amazing work. you know what I'm saying, that do amazing, that have relationships with families, that they have Saturday programs with kids, they play basketball with the kids every weekend, that do like real impactful work in the city, you know, and they're police officers, you feel me, and they're Black men, you know what I'm saying, that like care about their community, that one, like, it's a difference between being a police officer that wants to impact your community in one way versus somebody that just want to lock everybody up because you want to clean up the streets.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And you're not from there, or you're not from somewhere similar to there, so you don't even understand the culture. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, man. And it'll be hard to, you know, hold space with some folks that might have their own beliefs, because you're still a human. Even if you're a police officer, you're still a human being with your own belief system, with your own ideas of the way, you know, this society is or how people are, you know, and we have to break that, you know, we have to figure out a way to break that. And the only way is to be able to communicate, you know, and if it means there need to be a restorative justice circle to change people's perspective, you know, and get people to see their human, and also, you know, for folks in the community to see like, man, maybe not all police are bad, you know, maybe not all police are racist. The system is, you know, the police academy or like whoever is racist, you know, but maybe there's some good people in there that can actually change that.
Yeah,
that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
You have a lot more faith in that than I do.
I know, because I ain't gonna lie, like, I'm an abolitionist too. Like, you know, we should be abolishing that and thinking of, you know, other ways to, you know, let the community figure this out. But
because in my mind, like, you're talking about like those police officers who are doing these programs. You don't need to be a police officer to do these programs.
Right.
For
sure.
That money can just like be in the community.
Definitely. Right, exactly. You gotta, and that's a good ass point. Like, you don't have to be a police officer to do these programs, you know. But shit,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, you made a good point there.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Right, and I know like 90% of police work is not, you know, shooting people. Right. I think police are asked to do too much, and it should not be police officers responding to a lot of the things that police officers are responding to. But we could, that in itself could be a whole entire podcast. These are supposed to be the quick questions to get us out of here. You get to sit in circle with 4 other people. Who are they and what do you talk about?
That's your question?
Yeah.
4 other people. Could it be anybody in particular? Or?
Could be anybody. It's the version of like, you get to have dinner with 4 people, but since it's restorative justice, you get to sit in circle with 4 people. Who are they? What do you talk about?
Man. Mike Tyson. Real talk. Bob Marley. Marcus Garvey. And Maya Angelou.
What do you talk about?
Life, man. Just life in itself. I feel like every person that I mentioned has like so much wisdom that I can learn from. And believe it or not, even like Mike Tyson, man. Like, I don't know if you ever seen his podcast, Hot Boxing.
But I mean, brother's been through it.
Oh my God, man. And just to see who he is now, and for him to recognize like his growth and also like the trauma and like who he was, he doesn't like that person,
right?
Who he was, you know, and just watching who he is now, like, I'm so impressed with the way he's like growing as an individual. So just between him, Bob Marley, just like his whole thought process of just like life and like what's riches versus, you know, what's important, you know. And who else? I said Marcus Garvey. Just his whole like concept of Pan-Africanism and the diaspora, and, you know, how we should be connected worldwide. and just Maya Angelou, man, just her spirit, and just her deep thought process into love and appreciation for the small things. You know, I think that would be such a like interesting conversation to have with those individuals. I'm about to use that. I'm about to steal this one, bro. Like, that's a good one.
Take it. It's yours.
That's a good one.
What's one thing you want everyone listening right now to know?
Man, I just want folks to know. I mean, and I really want to speak first towards Black people to continuously like to have hope and focus on joy. I think that's important for us in terms of our mental health and our wellness, is to not get caught up in trying to fight this oppressive system, because it can be tiring and it can kill you, just the stress in itself. But to focus on joy and your health and your wellness and taking care of yourself. And collectively for everyone as human beings, to just practice, just being human, man. This humanity as a whole, just how we see each other. It's beautiful to have differences and belief systems and the way we see the world and the way we engage, but also be respectful to each of those differences. Even if somebody doesn't agree with you, doesn't mean that you should want to cause harm or bring harm to that person. I think that's something I would want people to practice more of, because we're definitely at a stage that's become volatile and hurtful in many ways. And the way society is going right now, like, it's not going to benefit anyone. It's not going to benefit any of us if we continue this way. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And finally, who's one person I should have on this podcast? Caveat, you have to help me get them on.
Okay. I would say I can help you for sure. Either Kenny Moore, Malachi Gary, Eric Butler. I don't know if you know who that is.
Yeah, I know. We've never spoken, but I know who he is. Yeah.
I can get those folks to you for sure. Or even young people.
Yeah. For
I
sure.
think that's important.
Yeah, I would really honestly love that. We've had one young person who is a graduate of OUSD, who's actually the second person on this podcast. His name is Griffin. Oh, I met him on that webinar, actually. I don't know if you remember Griffin Castillo.
Yeah.
He's actually working with me doing the things that we're doing at Amplify RJ. Like, actually, I'll plug this. I don't know when this is going to run. No, this isn't going to run in time, but he's facilitating some of the intro to restorative justice workshops that I'm offering, but I've also given him the platform to run youth empowerment and restorative justice workshops, and so he's done with like...
Man, I'm not taking no credit for that. But man, I appreciate that, man. That's so dope. That's what I'm talking about. Like, creating that space or that forum where you network with people, and you and also like say, okay, let's do this together. Like, just collaborations. That's what I love, and that's something that I've done a lot. Is just like, if I know somebody's good at something, and then I might know somebody that can actually work with you because I feel like they're good at that too, I usually bring them together, then just back up, just let them do their thing.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks to you. That's how Griffin got here, and he's been doing some really dope work. Yeah, and I don't want to take all the credit because he's just doing his thing. It's just like, here's the platform, young man.
For sure.
Go forth and
for sure. That's fire, man. I appreciate that. That's what's up.
I think that's a good place to end out on. Thank you so much, RJ, for being here with us.
For sure.
And we'll talk to everybody else next week.
Absolutely, man. Peace.
Quick update. Griffin is taking a break from Amplify RJ to focus on school and his work in Oakland Unified School District. You can still catch the on-demand version of his Youth Empowerment and Restorative Justice workshop and all our other offerings at the link in the description. Like what you heard? Please subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast on whatever platform you're using right now. It really helps us further amplify this work. You can also support us by following us on our social platforms, signing up for our email list, rocking our new merch, joining our Patreon, or signing up for a workshop. So many options! Links to everything in the show notes and on our website, amplifyrj.com. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.